My name's Tubba. I'm Bubba's sister. I'm the to-be-announced speaker sharer this morning. My name is Carol Thornton, and I'm a very grateful and enthusiastic member of Al-Anon. And what I like to do is, I'd like to see the hands of the alcoholics in the room. I know where the Al-Anons are. I want you Al-Anons to look at the members of Alcoholics Anonymous who have an open mind. You can't catch Al-Anonism any more than we can catch alcoholism. We tried. We gave it our best shot. And Cricket said it very eloquently yesterday. She said Al-Anons are twice as sick as we are. And I said, you betcha. Because that's why I have two ribbons. The AA chairman gave me one. The Al-Anon chairman gave me one. I wear both of them, AA, Al-Anon. And the reason for that is there's not an alcoholic in this room that would put up for 1 second with what we put up for years. Not one. I want to thank Heidi for asking me. Heidi and I go back a long way. She did not remember this, but in the early 80s, she gave me the Al-Anon one day at a time, which I have used daily in my recovery since she gave it to me. The inscription in there said, someday I'd like to have a prince like yours, and someday she will. But I've kept that book, and if you've never read the book and you want to find your niche in this program, what it was like and what happened, read that every day. And just put the name program in there instead of Al-Anon if you wish. But there you'll find the answers in simple everyday language. No big dollar words, just simple everyday words. So try it, because the Al-Anons don't have the choices that we had as adults. And it's very clear in there, and I urge everybody, if you're having trouble with your fourth step, get the Al-Anon workbook. Because there's not anybody that can understand the fourth step better and in a better place than that Al-Anon workbook. I want to thank you for the basket, for the speakers that got baskets. They are beautiful. They're just gorgeous. It's always a treat to see all the great artistic ability that we have. You know, we are so talented. We just are. You know, that's all there is to it. I want to thank Dinah and Marianne for driving me up here. Dinah drove. She has a brand new, sleek SUV that they're shooting all the windows out up home. But we got through okay. We didn't get our shot out. And Marianne and I go back. She was my sponsor early on in the program, and we had a 12-step panel. And we met Don Locke in the hallway, and Don was a favorite of ours. We even don't tell anybody because we don't want to get thrown out, but we even talked at AA meetings, believe it or not. And wasn't that we knew anything more about the 12 steps than you do. It was that we were enthusiastic about the love and the laughter that we found in working the steps, and we just passed it on for a long time. The magic of that panel is that the five of us are still friends today, and we're all still in Al-Anon in various stages of recovery. Some days good, some days bad. And my Angie and I go back a long, long way. We were good friends with Irish Annie, and they taught me a lot. Angie taught me a lot, too, and still continues to do that. But I need to tell you, I had to write down the names of the people that I wanted to especially ask. I always forget someone, but this is my amend. If I did forget it, it's my age. And I'm more mature than most. And from my home group, from my home area, where we have family recovery. We have all three programs, and we're very, very close in the South Bay. We have our Roundup on the 4th of July. This year it starts on the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So be sure and come up. We brought flyers down, and we left them. Hopefully they didn't throw them away. Debbie and Chuck Hoover are here from my area, and they're very special. And, of course, Rotten Ron is always around, but he never comes to the lunch. Don and Jackie are here. Don and I both serve on our board for the Roundup. We just have lots of friends. The Darrells are here. Bill's here. We met when I was making coffee in a hospitality room someplace. He said, "What are you doing making coffee if you're the speaker?" I said, "'Cause I know how." I have lots and lots of love relatives because that's what you are to me. Heidi almost, could be my daughter-in-law. She was actually sick enough to date one of our sons in Alateen, but she didn't. And being a love relative of mine is much more fun than being a blood relative, because I love you more than I love my blood relatives, because I don't have to tell you how I am or what I'm doing. You can tell by my eyes. And I'm real grateful for that. I have to leave here early because I've got sick on Monday and I have to fly on Wednesday, and I've got a cold or sinus or something, but I hope I can apologize for my voice. I sound like I drank a lot and smoked a lot of cigarettes, and I did all those things too, but a long time ago. I'm a member of Al-Anon that was born Al-Anon. I was born responsible for everything and everybody that was none of my business. And that's just the way it is. I'm an Army brat. I'm one of 7 children. I was born and raised in the service. I have 5 brothers and a sister. And it was a fun family. I hate to tell you, but my parents are not alcoholic. They drank and partied and had parties every Saturday night on the Army bases all over the country. And they drug us all over the world. And when I was a young lady, there were very few things that I wanted. Now, the things that I'm able to share with you this morning are the result of a 4th step written with the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and written in the 4-column method. Now, I know some of you won't approve of that because you think that it's not conference approved. But I'm here to tell you that nothing in this room is conference approved. None of us are conference approved. It gave me the labels that I'm able to share with you this morning, because everything that we have in Al-Anon we got from Alcoholics Anonymous. So please don't forget that. We haven't written anything new. Nothing new has been written. It's just been repeated. And it worked for me. But it gave me the labels that I'm able to share with you. When I was a young lady, I didn't want much. I wanted to grow up, get married, and have 8 children, and live in one town and stay in that town for my whole life. I never wanted to move. I wanted my children to go to school and their children to go to school in the same town and have a little house, all that stuff, Back in my era, it worked. The rule in our house, my dad raised us like the Army. We had Saturday morning inspections. We were restricted to quarters. My brothers didn't have to do one thing. I didn't like being a girl from the get-go because it seemed to me that the guys had it easier. My brothers didn't have to peel potatoes. They didn't have to wash dishes. They didn't have to clear the table or dry dishes or make their bed or iron, any of that stuff, and I thought I was very put upon. Now, I didn't have enough sense to say anything. Those were back in the days when children were raised to be seen and not heard. I sometimes wish my grandchildren would remember that, but it's a different ball game today, I can tell you. Different ball game. And so I never told that I was unhappy. I didn't even know I was unhappy until I did that inventory. It gave me all the labels for my life. I didn't like being a girl because there were so many different rules. I had to be in the house at 9 o'clock. When I was growing up, my brothers could stay out till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. But the rule from my mother was they had to take me everywhere. And let me tell you, I can beat my brothers at everything. Every sport in the book, you name it, I can do it and beat them. And they didn't like that one bit. But I hung out with them, and we had a lot of fun. We didn't get in too much trouble, but my dad whipped us with the belt. I do not go to Battered Children's Anonymous. We deserved everything we got. And it was fun to get a whipping in our house because we got to watch each other. My brother, who went on to become a school teacher, the youngest one, we used to pay him a nickel to hide the belt, and then he'd be such a dummy. My dad would say, whoever hid that belt, tell the truth. And he would always tell the truth and get a whipping for ratting on us. So he did that for a long time. I was not allowed to date till I was 16 years old. I thought that was a tacky thing. I'm grateful today that I didn't. I wasn't allowed to do a lot of the things because with my conscience I probably wouldn't have had as good a time, believe me. But anyway, we moved a lot, and God, I hated moving. I hated being the new girl in school. My mom didn't know how to do hair. I wore my hair in braids till I was 16 years old, wrapped around my head. I wanted to look like Shirley Temple. And I know many of you are too young to remember Shirley Temple, but for those of us that are more mature, it's going to be rerun on TV if you want to see it. I thought I should look like that. I had all those advantages, tap, toe, and ballet, But my folks drank it. I never saw anything wrong with that. From the time I was 15, 16, I wanted to be 40 years old because my folks were in that age group and they just had such fun. It just looked to me like 40-year-olds had it all together. They could say what they wanted, do what they wanted, and dance and dress this way and that way. And I just thought it would be marvelous to be 40, and I still do. I got news for you. You better enjoy what you are, where you are, because you can't go back. And I don't want to. I'm quite happy where I am today, thanks to this program. But when we moved to New York, my father decided it was time to get me out of overalls and into a dress. And so he put me in a convent school. And they weren't even Catholic. I never understood that. But back in the olden days, as my kids like to say, that's what they did with young girls. You went to a parochial school or a convent school with children of all ages, all races, and I am so very grateful because of my being raised in the service, I didn't have a lot of the prejudice and things that go on in the world today, which makes it a pretty sad situation. But in that school, I was trained. My nuns were not kind and loving. They were trained by Hitler, and they were really pretty bad. Today I know why they were so rotten. But the meanest nun in that school was my personal friend and spent many times in my home in the past few years. And she loved what Al-Anon and AA had done for me and spent a lot of time together. But she was mean. Today I know why they're mean because I've been to the Brentwood meeting, Clancy's meeting down there in Brentwood, and I saw a bunch of nuns take a first-year cake. They probably just needed a drink to be kind and loving. I don't know. Times have changed, though, believe me. They don't even wear habits now, but they should have stuck with them. But I watched Sister B get sober in Whittier, California at Serenity Hall, and she was a mess. She was the biggest mess I'd seen in a long time. She really did look like the crying nun. She always looked like a nun. I tell her, even in a bathing suit, you look like a nun. There's just some kind of a mark on him, magic marker. But I'm grateful for that today. I am not a recovering Catholic. I turned Catholic in that convent. I was a convert to Catholicism, and I majored in guilt and minored in shame. Because that's what I heard. That's not what they taught. Even today, when I'm out of sorts with the God of my understanding, I'm out of sorts with you. And I know that today through my work in this program and through working the steps and having a sponsor. But I just thought different. My thinking is still my biggest problem. But I became a Catholic in there. I am a Catholic in good standing. I'm not a recovering Catholic. They didn't have nothing to do with how I got here. And I'm grateful to say that, happy to say it. And but it began. It helped with the pain that was to come. I'll say it that way. Now, when I was 16, I returned from Europe, where I'd gone to school for 3 years in Austria, and Because of that fine Catholic education, I had skipped a couple grades, and I was out of high school working on a large army base up north, and I met the God of my understanding. I hadn't done too much dating in high school, and I had a lot of boyfriends because I got along with boys, but those that dated me had a hard time because I had to be on the base before 11, or the MPs had instructions to take me out of the car and take me home to my father. And they did that the night of my senior ball. I never saw the guy again. And they just didn't like all the rules. But my father meant what he said what he meant, and he covered the ground he stood on till the day he died. None of us ever answered him back. And I'm most grateful for that, especially when it came to the amends steps of this program. I met this man. He was a big football player in the Army, and I was working, and let me tell you, he just knocked the socks off me. He was tall and good-looking and had big dimples, nice teeth, blonde wavy hair, big shoulders. Sounds like a horse, but he was really... really what every woman wants, like the typical alcoholic, you know. They just got that charisma, you know. And I was tall and ugly and felt ugly. I was like the ugly duckling. I just never, ever felt pretty. I just knew I was ugly. And, you know, I was engaged to this man for 2 years, and he proposed with me with those magic 2 words that we heard in our area that you don't hear today. He said, "You're what?" And you guys are pretty slow. In our area, we call them donor fathers. So we ran away and got married. And let me tell you, I know today as I stand here that he was alcoholic when I met him. You see, but if there's one thing I know, that people that think that they didn't get sick till they married him or her, you know, what a road you're going to have. The horns in my head match the holes in his. I mean, sick attracts sick. That's exactly the truth. We fulfilled a need in one another for a long, long time. I loved him to pieces. I almost loved him to death. And that's the truth. And my marriage is nothing unique. I wanted 8 children. He didn't want any, and I have 4. Now they're all mine. I don't know whether you understand that, but they're all makeup kids. I could have named them Jim Beam, Coors, you know. You know, because in my house we played all the games in a drunken marriage. In the big bed, out of the big bed, on the couch, in the big bed, back, another kid. It was just something that, you know, goes with the drinking. I don't know why. People say, "Why did you stay so long?" I was a lady who didn't have enough sense to come in out of the pain. I just didn't know anything about alcoholism because of my background. My folks drank, my brothers drank. Some of them belong in the other program. That's my opinion, and they didn't ask for it, so I don't tell them. But a couple of them have died of alcoholism. That's not what's on their death certificate, as you well know, but I know that. But I never tried to get them into AA because it isn't my job. God, isn't that terrible? Sometimes when they get sober, you just have to retire. Everything in my marriage was part of a drunken marriage. There was child abuse in my home. I apologize for that because I had no knowledge. I was raised that the man was the head of the house and he doled out the punishment. And I didn't stop that for a long time. And caused a great deal of pains to my son. I need to tell you, I have 2 girls. I had a little girl, the first one, and I was told I couldn't have any more children, and 15 months later I had another one. That tells you who's in charge of my life. 4 years went by, didn't have any. I don't know what happened. He wasn't out of town. And then we were remarried in the Catholic Church. I thought I was being punished, not by God, well, kind of like God, because I had married a Southern Baptist. Now, that's worse than being pregnant when you're married, according to the church. Now, that's as I heard it, not what they said. So he decided to marry me in the church because he knew with my conscience that I would never divorce him, and he was right for a number of years, a lot of years, more years than I like to remember. But I don't ever want to forget where I come from, because that man gave me the greatest gift in the world, and that's to be standing here today in Laughlin, Nevada, telling you that my home was no different than yours, just different variations of it. They're all the same. All the same. You're just loving someone to death, trying to find out the answer. I worked full time, had these 4 kids, and I was also a battered wife. And I know you'll find this hard to believe, but I could not shut my mouth. It was like my tongue was attached to the doorknob. He arrived home and I started. And it was like I knew how to start him. He knew how to start me, and we never failed to be able to start one another. And I thought tough love meant standing up to him. It does not. When I got here, I was not a pretty sight to behold. But 2 of my children were crippled children, poster kids here in California. They were injured at birth, and I thought that God was getting even with me for being pregnant when I was married. That is not true. God's a lover. He loves me no matter whether I'm naughty or nice, and I know that today. But back then they were old ideas, because I was old before my time. I was old when I was 18. I don't know about you. I have before and after pictures if you'd like to see them. They're not pretty. But we just get old trying to fix someone else when it really isn't any of our business. Isn't that a shame? But I worked very hard at my job. I was a very valuable employee. I was there all the time. I got perfect attendance at every job I had. And I know today why I did that. And I know today why I was busy with the children, why I went to every PTA meeting and all the school things and business and professional women. It's because I didn't want to take a look at Carol. I didn't want to take a look at what was happening in my home. I went to bed every single night in that 26-and-a-half-year marriage thinking that what was happening in my home was not really happening, that I was going to wake up the next day and find everything the way I imagined it to be in the first place. And that's not how it goes, folks. I knew nothing about blackout drinking, so after one of these little meaningful discussions, is what I like to call them today, I looked like I'd been hit by a Mack truck. And my husband would be singing in the shower. And I want to tell you, if I'd have had a gun, I'd have blown his brains out. Because I'd never understood how he could be singing in the shower after the morning afterwards. And he would say, "Oh, my God, Carol, you have such a sick mind." And I think, I'm losing it. I'm just really losing it, He was very jealous, and he would accuse me of all these horrendous things when he was gone on his little trips. Now, he never, ever left and said, "Carol, I'm going to be gone about 14 days, and while I'm gone, don't eat, sleep, or have any fun, but lie, cheat, and steal, and cover for me while I'm gone," But that's what I did. That's what I did. I waited. There's one thing Al-Anon, pre-Al-Anons are, is we are tenacious waiters. These are not from old age. These are from years of looking out in Venetian blinds. There's some waiters in here, I can tell. We are so foolish, just so foolish. I could have been sleeping. What a thought, Things just got steadily worse in our house. We were just the pillar of the community. People would say to me, "Oh, he's such a wonderful man. I wish I had him." And I'd say, "I wish you did too." They had a sarcastic killer mouth. Killer mouth. I always like what Merp says, You know what this is? It's an Al-Anon sharpening her tongue. Bad. Bad. But things got worse, as they always do. I tried suicide twice in my marriage, and I am not proud of that fact. But I'm here to tell you, God don't make junk, He don't take junk, and He didn't want me. No one leaves here regardless of how they go, without God's permission. And I know that today. I need to hurry up and tell you. I didn't know there were suicide attempts till I came to my to my Al-Anon meeting, and my first Thanksgiving here, the topic was suicide. And we commit suicide in various ways. We eat, we don't eat, we smoke, we drink coffee, we stay up, we work 10 jobs at once. We can do 10 things at once and still look good because we're crazy. And we just don't know when to quit, you know. And we always had these conversations, and it was going to get better, and it was going to get better. And I'm happy to report that of the 4 children, my 2 daughters are the least affected by their dad's drinking. They're all affected by their mother. I can tell you that. But the boys got the worst end of the stick because they were the youngest ones, and they got to see a lot of things that children shouldn't see and shouldn't hear. Because in the beginning we argued in whispers. How many of you do that? Don't say anything. The kids will hear us. You know. Kids are smarter. They know who's sickest. They really do know, you know. In case you think they don't know, they do know. Because I've been to a lot of Al-Anon meetings, and I know they know. But I just got sicker and sicker. Things were always going to get better. I'd never heard of Alcoholics Anonymous, let alone Al-Anon, in all those years. We moved to Southern California. It was a place I didn't like. I'd never wanted to move here because of the traffic. And now it's about quadrupled to what it was years ago. But we were moving to Southern California. Things were going to get better. Besides that, my husband was a womanizer. He had lower companions. Now, I learned to call them lower companions from Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. So it takes a lot of pain out of it, believe me. I have some real good friends who were lower companions today. When I was doing Al-Anon, I got 6 copies of The Happy Hooker in brown paper wrappers. And I know they came from my AA ladies. But anyway, I moved down here, and my husband disappeared a lot, and I'd like to tell you I never looked for him. I only tell you about 2 times, because that's the only 2 times. Once I saw his car where it shouldn't have been parked, and I removed it so he wouldn't kill anybody on the way home. And the next day when I came out of Mass, because by then I was a bead-clicking, candle-burning Catholic. St. Jude is still my favorite saint. The saint of the impossible and the desperate, and that was certainly me. I lied in confession. I didn't know what was going on in my house, you know. And my husband used to say, well, how would a priest know? He's never married, you know. So I always believed what he said. I thought everything he said out of his mouth was gospel truth. Till I met a lady from Texas at a meeting, in a newcomers meeting, and I said, somebody raised their hand and said, how do you tell when an alcoholic's lying? And she said, simple, honey. Just check and see if their mouth are moving. Now it's American greeting card. Because I've seen it. But anyway, when I came out of church the next day, my car was missing, and I had to walk about 2 miles home because, of course, there was no money. At least I didn't have any. All there were bills and kids. And so we got home, and he was standing in my spot cooking breakfast, large breakfast. We always had big Sunday breakfast at our house, and all our friends and neighbors from far and wide would come because it was so much fun. You know how you pretend, like tell your father to pass the salt. You know, you don't speak, you know, for weeks on end. And the second time, he was with one of his lower companions. I was one day out of St. Jude's Hospital, and I had had surgery, and I had over 100 stitches in one leg, and I wouldn't heal, so they had to let me go. And I know today why I wouldn't heal. It was impossible to heal when you're in that much pain. And I didn't know what to say. And I got home, and, of course, he wasn't there. And I started calling, because if there's one thing the Pre-Al-Anon's good at, it's finding them. We could open up our own detective agency because we can find anybody we want if they're ours. Not yours, because we don't care about yours. We only want ours, We can find them, but I knew how to find them, and I knew how to cause myself pain. I would call the motels, and I'd say, are Mr. and Miss so-and-so there? And they'd say, no, but they have reservations. Doesn't that do your heart good, So this time I called a hotel where we had stayed as a family, and he made his first mistake of the day. He answered the phone in the room, because he always used his best friend's name. Isn't that nice? I've never told his best friend that yet. But I said, I'll give you an hour to come home, and if you're not home, I'm coming up there, because I wanted the money that his firm was paying, and because we were going to move. When I was new, I said we were moving. But this podium pinnacle up here, I was being evicted is what I was doing. And you always tell the truth up here, most of us anyway. And I wanted that money. So I waited 59 minutes, and I conned my 17-year-old son and my friends from the large church that I worked for into taking me to that motel with the promise that I wouldn't go in. Biggest lie I ever told. They took me up there, and I knocked on the door, and he made his second mistake. He answered. And they were not properly attired for 2:30 in the afternoon. I don't tell you this to degrade the alcoholic, because at least he was drunk. I tell you this to show you how sick I got. I entered that room. I don't know how I got in there. His lower companion ran into the ladies' room and locked the door. I don't know why. She was afraid of me. And I made a hole about this big in the door with her overnight case. Of course, they weren't doing anything wrong. And I threw her wig out in the middle of Whittier Boulevard. He didn't even know she had one on. I stole her purse, and I took it to the police station and turned it in because I knew that her husband was a cop in another town. Yeah. And then I went back and had a drink with them, both. She came over to thank me for not telling her husband. She didn't know about her purse yet. And my husband walked over, and he said, if there's one thing my wife is, it says she's a fine Christian lady. And I'll tell you, I tossed that glass under the bar and broke it, and I swung on him. And I'm the one that got cut, not him. And I left, because I wanted that money. I wanted the money. I'd like to tell you, I ran home, went to Al-Anon. Did not do it. Now, I had been to 2 open AA meetings by that time. Once because my sober sister-in-law was visiting. Her brother went to jail for drunk driving, and I would not get him out. It wasn't that I knew anything about getting anybody out of jail or whether to or not to. There are no rules about that, by the way. Those that tell you you shouldn't are those that have never had one in. So remember that. We are free spirits up here. And, God, we went home, and he came home. We had this wonderful conversation. But I had been to that AA meeting with my sister-in-law, and Serenity Sam was the speaker, and he's still today my favorite speaker, because I laughed that night like I laughed at home. And I heard all these horrendous things, and it was just a marvelous feeling. And I got to be with him on his birthday this past year in Indiana, and it was the highlight of my life, because I got to thank him one more time for being the catalyst that got me here. I had been to an open AA with my husband, who had told me he was going to save our marriage. I was 2 years in Al-Anon before I found out he was going on a court card. But I went to that open AA meeting with them, and they laughed, and they hugged, and they kissed, and I just loved it. I just thought, oh, God, what a way to live, Because before I came down on, the week before I came down on, a man reached out to touch me on the shoulder, and I swung on him. Because, you see, I didn't like being touched. Because if I smoked your cigarette, your brand, that meant I slept with you. And if I smoked your brand, that meant I slept with you. It didn't matter were you a man or woman to him, and I got all these accusations about that, so I just shut down in all areas of my life. I loved people all my life until I got married. Now, no one told me I had to stop, but anyway, turned out it was my neighbor's father that I had known for a long time. But I remember that AA meeting because a lovely lady was at the door and she patted me on the hand and she said, "Carol, you ought to come to Al-Anon." I said, "I can't, I work." So that was the end of my Al-Anon career right there. But this one particular night, I had moved. While he was gone, I got enough guts to get my own checking account, and I moved into an apartment just right across the street from where I worked, down the street from where we lived, and across from the high school. You had to cover all the bases because by then I had 2 boys in high school. My girls were married and out of the house. And he came home that day, and we had one of those meaningful conversations. It was going to be better now that all those damn kids were growing up and leaving. It didn't sound as good as it did in the beginning. I can tell you this. But that day, friends came, and we were sitting by the pool. We'd always wanted a pool. We had this 2-bedroom apartment and a beautiful pool in our front yard. And my husband said, "Let me mix you a drink." And I said, "No, I'll never drink with you again as long as I live." Now, my husband had taught me to drink. I went out every Friday night to keep the romance in our marriage. Does not work. When he taught me to drink, I drank at him, against him, for him, to get drunk first so he'd see what he looked like. Does not work. They just take you home, dump you, and go about it their business, If drinking would have worked for me, I'd have done it, I know that I'm not an alcoholic. I heard, I always think, Peggy Martin talk in Scottsbluff, Nebraska one time when I was back there at an Al-Anon convention, and I was in the AA meeting, and she said, "The more I drank, the bigger my tits grew." And I thought, holy mackerel, doesn't make me feel like that, I don't have that magic, whatever it is they get. If you're short, makes you tall. If you're tall, makes you short, And if you're a woman, it just makes things grow. And you can see that it's never worked for me. The chest fairy hasn't struck yet. But I'm voluptuous inside where it counts. So. But I wouldn't drink with him. And the next thing I remember was waking up at that 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I was black and blue from head to foot, had very few teeth, no glasses, and I had lost the hearing in one ear as a direct result, one more time, of my mouth and lack of knowledge. And I got up and ran away from home. And I ran to my boss's house. He called a doctor. I called Alcoholics Anonymous. I will be forever grateful that I made that phone call. It's the only thing I remembered. And the magic of that was that AA man on the other end was a gentle person. And he listened to me. I don't even know what I said. And he said, "Carol, would you do me a favor?" I said, "Sure, if I can." He said, "Would you just give me the number of where you're at?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I have a lady that needs to talk to you, and she'll call you right back." Swear to God, when I hung up that phone, when I touched the cradle, it seemed like it rang again. I know it's not that short a period of time, but in my memory, that's what it is. And it began a necklace of diamonds that only God and I can see. And by that was a lady called me. She made a classic 12-step call on me. She came to that house where I was staying, and she spent the entire day with me. I don't remember what she said, but she stayed with me. She took me to my first Al-Anon meeting that night in La Habra, California, August 15th of 1974, and I've been home ever since. I have never found it necessary to take a sabbatical and go out and see if the grass is greener over here or if there's something over there. I haven't gone to a therapist. I haven't gone to a counselor because they cannot give me what you give me, which is unconditional love. And they don't understand. I don't care how many degrees they have. They do not understand the language of the heart. And they never will. because you got to be one. You got to be one or the other, you know. And I loved my first Al-Anon meeting. Nobody said, what happened to your face? Why do you look like that? Why are you wearing dark glasses? I thought I looked like a movie star, you know. A lovely, teeny, little tiny lady, voluptuous little lady, I might add, shared at the break about how she stopped the physical violence in her home. And that's what we do. We share. Everybody in this room's equal. There's nobody any higher, nobody any lower. We're all equal in time in the program. Doesn't matter anything when your butt falls off. You want someone that's here with you. You never have to do anything alone. Never, unless you choose to. But this lady said, I just waited till he was trying to sober up, and she said, just looked him in the eye and said, remember, you have to sleep sometime. And she said, now I went home and waited. Because, you know, everything that you've ever wanted in your life, you get here. When it's in God's time, not our time. But, you know, my time came because by then he had day and night mixed up. He was unemployable and he was home all the time, and I was getting complaints by the neighbor because of his lack of wearing apparel. And I don't know why they tend to dislike clothes sometimes. I really don't. My husband came naked to the dining room table one Sunday after I'd been in Al-Anon about 2 months. And my 2 sons were absolutely livid. And they said, Mom, you are so sick to sit here and let Dad just ding-dong it all over the house, and you're not doing anything or saying anything. And I said, Doug, your dad decided not to dress for dinner. You know, if you don't keep a light touch in your home, you're going to go mad. Especially when they're still drinking. My heart goes out to those whose people are still drinking and you're living in the program. Believe you me, you stick with the winners and win with the stickers. That's how you do it. So anyway, it got maddening in his house. And he was sobering up that morning, and I, with my smart, sarcastic mouth, said, you'll never touch me again. Just remember, you have to sleep sometime. And he became a nervous sleeper. And I loved it. You know, he'd start to doze off, then he'd look to see where I was, you know. But it still, after all these years, you know, I'll be 27 August 15th if I make it. And it still does my heart good to remember things like that, you know. I got very busy in Al-Anon. I went to 45 meetings my first 30 days. I did not have a car at my disposal, and I was living in a zoo because by then my 2 boys had started drinking like their dad. It was like I had triplets. But thanks to my sponsor, that lady became my sponsor, my first sponsor, and she took me to Al-Anon one night and Open AA the next night. And that has been a part of my life from there to now. I'm as comfortable in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings as I am in Al-Anon and Alateen when I'm invited. And those are the only 3 things that I go to. I was raised to carry the message by example. There are only 3 ways to carry the message of AA, Al-Anon, Alateen, and that's by example, by example, by example. What my sponsor told me was nobody behaves in these rooms like they do at home. Uh-huh. There she is. It's Heidi's mom. So we're safe here. I want to see how you behave at home. I don't care how you behave in meetings. That's where the problem is. And I was taught to take my problem home first. My first sponsor gave me rules. Not rules. I call them assignments. I call them assignments today because I sponsor a lot of lovely ladies. I only sponsor ladies. I don't call them babies because they've been to hell and back just like the alcoholic. And they are certainly not babies. And if you think, you know, you've got a corner on the market, you don't, because I used to have a lot of rules for sponsorship because I got very busy. I got into the steps right away. I came into big step country. I went to step studies. We were not allowed to share on the steps unless we'd worked them. Now, that'll give you an incentive to get ahead. I can tell you right now. Marianne is an example of that. She was with us on that 12-step panel. And so I did that because I wanted what they had. I still want what I see. I don't judge you by what you got, where you're going, or what you're driving. I judge you by the sparkle in your eye and the love you have for one another. I quit shaking hands. That was my first assignment. She said, you don't like to be touched, so don't shake hands. Hug. My first real assignment was to go home and pretend to be happy while I did all those 4 little words like wash, iron, cook, bake, kiss, love. I said, you don't understand. She said, I understand. At home. So home is where you get to start working your program. And you know what? It began. I whistled and sang while I did all those things. My husband used to say to me, you're not happy. And I'd say, yes, I am. It works. My second assignment was to go home and tell my children that I loved them out loud, and my relatives and friends. And for me, it was like learning to speak Chinese. I don't know why I didn't hear it as a kid. I know my parents loved me. I know through my inventory I wanted all the love my dad gave to 7 of us just for me. I was his pet, as far in my eyes. I don't know. He raised me black and white, no gray. Caused him a lot of pain in later years. But I never wanted a divorce. That was something that my folks had gotten after 35 years, and the 7 of us took sides. It was like another war in our house. I am so grateful for the immense steps that I made to my mother and to my father because I got into their business through lack of knowledge. But that was all healed before either one of them passed away, and I'm so grateful for that. And the same for my brothers and my sister. I've made my amends and done that. But when I finished my 4-step inventory, I got a divorce. It was not an easy thing to do because we had to find him. And through my inventory, I know that I did not have the right to ask anyone else to behave the way I thought he should behave, and that it was no longer my responsibility. When I came to Al-Anon, I retired as entertainment chairman in my home. And let me tell you, that saves you a lot of pain, a lot of pain. I learned to mind my own business. Stopping criticizing people, for me, was as hard for me as it is for the alcoholic to give up drinking. Some days I go back to it. Believe that. There are just days, and then there are days. I've gone through everything with my children. My oldest daughter lost her first child full term. My second daughter had brain surgery at 28 years old and was told she'd be a vegetable. She is not. Thank you. And I had more than 75 people in the rooms with me in the hospital when I went through that. I never had to go anything. I went to court a lot for back taxes, garnishment of wages, child support. Never did get any till after he kicked the bucket. And then by a fluke, my children got their child support, retroactive. And that was very nice. We were friends. And we remained friends through his lifetime because he lived out of state. That's very good to know. And I got that divorce, and I stayed in Al-Anon single. People would say, why are you still coming to the program, Carol? You no longer live with the problem. I always wear this mirror when I talk, because when I'm out of sorts with you, I'm out of sorts with God. And I just have to look in this mirror and find out where the problem is. Those little stickers I had says you're looking at the problem, and I have them on every mirror in my house, because I know that I was always the problem. I can't blame my folks, the church, my first alcoholic husband, the bad one, and anything. I dated in Al-Anon when it was time, when I was supposed to. It took a long time. And I dated some alcoholics who were not conference approved. But they were fun and they were gentlemen and they taught me so much. You know, we went to AA dances and potlucks, and the married people in this program I will be forever grateful for, because they took me everywhere, whether I wanted to go or not. I loved to dance, but my husband was not a good dancer until he had a few drinks, and then he thought he was Fred Astaire. But he wasn't, and and I loved that, and they drugged me everywhere. So if you're married and you have single people in your group, Please include them in everything. I learned to go with them not to have coupleitis. I don't know whether you have coupleitis here in Laughlin, but it's like you wake up one day and say, everybody's married but me. No, well, that's not true. You know, God, when you do your grateful list, your gratitude list, look at the things single people get to do. They can eat popcorn for dinner or Cheerios, whatever, you know. They don't have to wash and iron and cook, you know. Today I dust my stove. I gave up cooking. Now, I'm a great cook. I really am. These people will attest to that, you know. And baker, I love to do it because I was in the Army and I only know how to do big things. I never make one recipe of nothing because it's just not worth it. But I dated these men. That's the only page in the big book I know is page 69. Because I dated a man in AA who read that to me every night for the short courtship we were having. If you don't know what it is, you'll have to read it and find out. But you know, Bill Wilson, this is not Divorce Anonymous. Don't get the wrong idea if you're new. Bill Wilson said it on page 187 in Lois Remembers, which is the book about Lois, that we AAs don't stay away from drinking. We grow away from drinking. And if our mates don't grow along with us, we sometimes grow away from them. So that'll keep you on your toes because we need to have our own program. We need to learn to stand on our own 2 feet. We need to learn to be loving and kind no matter what. The only answer to a problem in a marriage is love. That's what we were sent here to learn to do. That's how I believe. My God wants me to be loving and kind. He just wants me to be that way all the time. That's the kicker. That's the kicker. But I'll tell you, it gives you the biggest diamonds in the world. When it was time for me, God sent me a prince. He sent me that prince as a direct result of working the steps and the traditions in my home. I re-met Dick Thornton on the steps of a church in La Habra, California. And let me tell you, he is a real fox. He had that wonderful magic hair, that gray hair. I just love gray hair. I should have gray hair. My beautician tries. But I pay to have it done. She said, you really are a nut. She said, everybody in here wants dyed and you want gray. I said, well, I deserve it. But anyway, we dated, and that's a diamond. We fell in love, sober. Him sober in Alcoholics Anonymous a year longer than I was in Al-Anon. He needed that year to put up with me. And me sober thinking in Al-Anon. That's a diamond. He asked me to marry him, and I got my ring on Halloween when all good witches get their rings. God, we just went everywhere. We just had a wonderful time. You know, it's really magic for a second marriage or a third, fourth, whatever the case may be. So, to fall in love, you know. Actually, my friend B.R. says, love is but a fleeting moment. Lust lasts forever. I met him at that wedding, and when I got to the reception, he walked in with a short, blonde, voluptuous lady, and I almost died. And I said to the mother of the bride, because as it turns out, the bride had been and I had been very close because she was a member of Al-Anon, and she was marrying another Al-Anon who turned out later to be my new stepson. And so he walked in with this blonde, and I said to the mother of the bride, you know, as soon as she goes in the ladies' room, I'm going over and give Dick Thornton my card. She said, you wouldn't do that. I said, well, this is a program of attraction, and I want what he's got. I have to make a long story short. It is a love story, believe me. I lusted after him. I just thought he was the best thing ever in my life. And we just hit it off. We're both from the Dakotas. He was from South Dakota. I'm from North Dakota. And got our first date. We stayed till they threw us out of the restaurant, drinking coffee and talking. Because that's what you get to do when you have a program marriage. You talk feelings. That's why normal people scare us to death. I call them PWPs, people without a program. They are boring. And because once you talk about the weather, the job, and the kids, there's nothing to talk about. But in here, we talk about a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff, deep-rooted stuff. That's ordinary behavior for people who live with drinking and who love an alcohol. And that's the only way to go for me. But we married, and that's a diamond. We had a large church wedding. I had everything any bride could want. All our bridal party were made up of our children. Dick had 4, and I have 4. That gave me the 8 that I had wanted since a child. We made a commitment to that marriage, and by that is we put each other first. Dick put me before his 4 children, and I put him before mine. That's a diamond. All our children had been married longer than we had. That's a diamond. We did absolutely no babysitting for our then 16 grandchildren. That's a diamond. We did everything that we ever wanted to do. I was blessed to have my husband share with me. He was an excellent speaker and a proud member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you alcoholics just have a way. When you get sick, you never get just a cold. It's always pneumonia or something with complications. And when you get emphysema, it's always the worst part of it. And my husband developed emphysema and was very sick. He broke his hip the first 9 months we were married. We had promised the children we wouldn't have any kids. And I got to become a kept woman. I quit my job and I took care of Dick. And I got to do all the things that these daytime ladies get to do. I still find daytime meetings boring. I'm sorry to say that if you go to daytime meetings. I like the nighttime where they've worked all day, taken care of the kids and done all their chores. And they're too tired to go to a meeting, but there they are in their spot, Someone said, there's a clique in this meeting. I said, you're right. This side works the steps, that side don't. Take your choice. That's judging. But we got to go everywhere and do everything, and that's a diamond. My husband got very ill and almost died many times. He's had the last rites so many times that he probably went to heaven in a chariot. I don't know. But I can tell you this. We had a lot of fun because he was an Irishman and he was fun. And we worked that program in our homes, and we laughed a lot. Dick was homebound for many years. He was sick almost 14 years of our marriage. And I decided to go back to work, and he was very sad because Dick was from the old generation where the woman stayed home and took care of the house and did all those fun things. And I dreamt in my wildest dreams I would never be doing, but I did. I got to do it all. And I went to find this Mickey Mouse job for a large corporation, and I only wanted to be a receptionist because I just wanted to get dressed up every day because you got to have a reason to buy all those clothes. And I love clothes, and I never knew that till I got to Al-Anon. And so I found a job at Aerospace Credit Union, and they hired me on the day they did their biggest layoff. And I worked there 10 years. And because of that Mickey Mouse job and love of people, I knew a man who was on a cart with the nose hose up, like they have. And I asked him about it, and one day a month went by and I didn't see him, and he came in walking. And I said, what happened to you? How'd you get well so fast? And he said, well, I'm on this new program, Carol. I'm going to get a lung transplant. And boy, when I heard that, I went home, and because one thing we found out, and I'll pass this on for you, it's an outside issue, but in case your husband or wife or child gets sick, please don't take them to the hospital and leave them. Stay with them. Because if they are alcoholic, doctors know nothing about treating them. And they are so free with pills that sometimes they just happen to give them something wrong. But you need to be with your loved ones when they're in the hospital. And anyway, Dick and I always went to the doctor together, and we had our list of questions. And we would ask him all these questions, and I would write it down, because it takes two of you to understand the treatment. And by then, my husband had emphysema in the worst stages. He was at home, he had a 50-foot hose on his oxygen, and I told him if he was ever naughty, I'd tie a knot in that thing for him. But lots of things happened. I earned a lot of money because I charged him for coffee, showering him, and all these things. And, well, a woman kept has to have a way to earn an income. So, but we had a lot of fun. And I asked the doctor, I said, how come you haven't told us about the lung transplant program? He said, I didn't think Dick was a good candidate for it. And I said, really? I said, I didn't think you were God. And that got his attention. Because, you see, being an alcoholic, when you tell them you're an alcoholic, they kind of stop right there. But he told us about the lung transplant program and put us in touch with the people. And we tried out twice to get on that list. And the second time we went all the way to San Diego. And because of that, my husband got the gift of life on July 10th of 1992, and he got a new lung. And he got the lung of a 19, 20-year-old young man who had never drank or smoked in his life. And that's all we know about the donor. But it afforded us another 4.5 years of a glorious marriage because my husband was able to speak at AA meetings again. He was able to do all the things. And when I say all the things, I mean God had restored all the things in the right place, you know. And we just had a lot of fun. Now, my husband passed away 4 years ago on January 22nd. And it was a glorious death. I was not alone in that room. There were lots of people in that room with me. And he's an Al-Anon. And he passed away with a smile on his face and the right to go, you see. He said, I hate to leave you, Carol. And I said, well, I can't go today. And I said, evidently, it's not my time. And when he passed away, and the way I'm telling you this is because it's so important to have humor in your life and keep a light touch. I still have and use a sponsor today. I still sponsor a lot of ladies. My only rule for sponsorship today is call before you shoot. That's it. I used to have a lot of rules about writing the inventory, doing this, doing that, going to meetings. No. The only people more grateful for the women that I sponsor, and I only sponsor women, are their husbands. Because they work their program at home first. That's service. That's service. Don't get too busy to do. You took those vows for a reason, you know. Home is where the diamonds are. That's the best way I can tell you. But anyway, these friends of mine, Larcene and Butch and Sandy and Willie, took me to the home to shower and go directly to the mortician, undertaker, whatever. That dates me, undertaker. But we went, and of course, he was asking questions, and he said, are all these people your relatives? And I said, yeah, they're my love relatives. Now, they never hear the word love. And he said, oh, okay. So anyway, he said, I'm asking and they're answering. I said, well, they already know what I want. And so he said, you'll need to look. And they opened up this room, and it looked like this one, full of caskets. And the man said, you'll have to pick out a casket. And Larcene leaned over. We're looking at this ugly room. And she said, Carol, if you have to buy a casket, Kathy said, Kathy's our professional shopper in our house. We don't buy, in our area, we don't buy anything without going through Kathy and Kurt because they both love to shop. I mean, we don't buy nothing without going through them. And so she said, if you have to buy a casket, Kathy said, don't buy it here. She said, there's a deal on the internet. And let me tell you, it emptied my soul. I mean, it made me laugh. I laughed. And standing there crying and laughing, and the guy said, you really are a strange family. I said, you are absolutely right. So I want to tell you that anything you've ever wanted in your whole life, you can have here. I have everything any woman could want today. I share my home with another widow. And at the moment, we have another member of Al-Anon who has to have a job during the week in order to get her pension. So, of course, she's staying with us during the week. She goes home to her husband on the weekends. It's like I told her, I said, you know, when you get to go out of town and with your wife and share together, it's a speaker moon. That's what we call them. That's when you get to speak with your husband and share. And I call them speaker moons, you know, because those are the best thing. I don't know whether you've ever heard Tom Burns and Glenda Lee, but he always talks about at 18 his wife looks 66, and at 66 she looks 18 and behaves like a $100 a night hooker. I love it because I just love it when they talk about that. And I'm going to close with my sponsor who passed away a few years. I've had several sponsors in this program. It's okay to change sponsors, but I still have all my original sponsors in my life except for the ones that are upstairs with Dick. And Dick's doing fine. He's upstairs and he's having a good time. I told him that if he was fooling around with his wife that passed away before we married, I would get him and kill him again. So he knows better. But it's all in fun, because that's what we're having here. We're having the fun that God really wants us to have by laughing with each other at the things we lied about all our lives. I'm going to close with Winnie. Eddie was my sponsor till she passed away. My sponsor today is named Charlotte. She called me before I came down here to tell you that she sent the very best to you. And that's me, because I am better than I've ever been, thanks to you. And I'm going to close with Winnie's poem. It's called As Broken Dreams, or Winnie's Recipe for a Good Day. As children bring their broken toys with tears for us to mend, I brought my broken dreams to God because he was my friend. But then instead of leaving him in peace to work alone, I hung around and tried to help with ways that were my own. At last I snatched him back and said, "How could you be so slow?" "My child," he said, "what could I do? You never did let go." So if you don't do anything else, go to a lot of meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps, and change every single thing in your life. If you're not having fun at your meeting, stay till you do. Please don't go to someone else's meeting and muff it up. Stay. Make your meeting the best in the world, because that's what mine is. Mine is a Monday night podium participation meeting in Gardena, California, where every member of Al-Anon stands up and speaks up in a microphone, just like the big guys. You know, I was asked to speak when I was 30 days in Al-Anon. I said, I can't. I don't know anything. And my sponsor said, is your home life any different today than it was 30 days ago? I said, yes, but. And she said, no buts, Carol. You're not a motorboat. She said, what you do is you stand up, speak up, sit down, and shut up. And that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.